and minuscule population here, so come forward. In the class, what I'll do, this is about prelims current affairs, right? And sorry, we have a limited amount of time here in the class. So what I'll do, I'll be taking up some of the topics here. Some topics which I have identified, I'll be discussing about them here in the class. At the same point of time, I'll be sharing some material. Immediately after the class, I've already shared the material with the organization. I hope after the class, those materials will come to you. Clear? Fine. There would be two things. Number one, listing of issues which we think are significant from the point of prelims this time. At the same point of time, a brief material on most of those things. Okay. Then what are we going to do today in the class, here in the class? I'm taking up some 5-6 issues here. Okay? And all of these are going to be from international relations, from IR. You know me, I'm a faculty of IR and Indian society. So naturally, that's the area that I'm going to take up. Okay? Let's point out the areas which we are going to discuss here in the class. Number one, Russia-Ukraine war. A lot is going on. Why? On one fine sunny day, Mr. Vladimir Putin woke up, felt today I'm going to attack Ukraine, and he attacked Ukraine, something like that. Is he nuts or what? Why is this happening? So Ukraine wanted to join NATO and Russia decided, no, I'm going to attack them. Donetsk region that you're talking about, not just Donetsk region. There's a lot in this. Lot more than what meets the eyes. And believe me, no one is innocent here. No one is innocent here. The stand that is being taken by India, there is a very logical reason behind it. Right? Before going for Russia-Ukraine war, I would like to talk about the present posturing of India in international relations. Look at the statements being given by our External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar. I'm not bothered about most of the ministers. No, I'm not. We know how our ministers, they make statements at times, right? They are so knowledgeable people, they know so much about the constitution, which is not even written there, they can make statements on that. We have not become ministers yet, so we can't make those statements. Clear? But this person, he's not one of those. Let's talk about who Dr. S. Jaishankar is. Forget it. His father, K. Shankar, one of the closest associates of Mrs. Indira Gandhi and an IFS officer. A person who single-handedly changed the Nehruvian ideas in India's foreign policy making and brought an era in India which is even today called Indira Doctrine. An extremely high-handed mechanism of policy making in international relations. According to the parameters of international relations, we call this real politicking. What's happening with this real word? It talks about power. Negotiating or discussing from the position of power. That's what this does. This school does. While taking the class, Those of you who have been into my class, you know that I told you about one particular source, one free source of material from one think tank called IDSA, Institute of Defense Studies and Analysis. I told you to go to the website of IDSA, get the materials from there, because IDSA is a think tank, a research body. They keep on doing their researches, and all these researches are freely available to us. They are authentic things. Why? Because this is a government think tank. Do you know who formed IDSA? No, Manohar Parrikar did not form IDSA. It was K. Shankar, father of Dr. S. Jayashankar, who formed IDSA, being a part of Mrs. Gandhi's cabinet, Mrs. Gandhi's coterie of people. That's K. Shankar. Today we have a position called a National Security Advisor, NSA. Right? Today we have the chiefs of staff, the chiefs of staff in defense, that position, right? Do you know all of these things were suggestions given by K. Shankar after the Kargil conflict? K. Shankar made these suggestions, and based on his suggestions, the then Atal Bihari Vajpayee government, they started introducing these reforms. His son is Dr. S. Jayashankar. Don't get into party color. I am looking at a breed of technical experts. A breed of technical experts coming from real school. A typical school of scholars who believe in taking decisions from a position of power. Simple idea, the world will listen to you only if you are in a position of power. And the idea, the basic idea here is that the government of India, at the end of the day, their responsibility is not to ensure world peace, no. Their responsibility is to look after our interest. Okay? See the difference between Nehruvian approach and this approach. It's not fault of Nehru, and please don't criticize anyone. Why? Because you are talking about whomsoever you're talking about the government of India. Again, please don't get into the party color. You're looking at the governments of India, the successive governments of India. We have no right to criticize them. There's a famous saying in cricket. All the experts outside, they know very well how to play a ball. Considering that the person who's best in position to play the ball, that is the batsman, he knows the least. Here the batsman is the government. They're in the best possible position to play the ball. And we all think we know the best than them. Don't get into that. They know far more better what to do with all these things which are going on than what we can even think of. It is in this And one more thing, what I was telling you right now is also about, not just about prelims, it's also about mains, it's also about personality test. During all the 3 phases of the examination, do keep in mind that we are in no position to even contemplate what the government is doing. So at the same point of time, we also do not have any right to criticize the government as such. Okay? Now, it is in this backdrop that I'm looking at the policies of Nehru. Look at the situation when Nehru came into play. These people, Nehru, Sardar Patel, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, all these people, all of those leaders, they were coming from a highly ethical and moral form of movement. See the way they were schooled, see the way they were prepared to deal in their life, the Gandhian school of thought. In this backdrop, do you think that they could do anything which is immoral or which is amoral? There's a difference between immoral and amoral. Immoral means which is outrightly wrong. Amoral means something which has got nothing to do with morality. These people, the way they were groomed, the way they carried forward the movements and they did everything, they were highly moral and ethical people. So naturally that thing was also resonating in Nehru's foreign policy. I know on Friday, Sina sir was talking about the Nehruvian foreign policy in front of you. Even in my class, I have been telling you all the features of Nehruvian foreign policy. Highly moral and ethical way of approach. Anti-colonialism, anti-racism, peaceful use of nuclear technology. Nehru was never in favor of nuclear weaponization. At the same point of time, NAM, Panchsheel, all of these features. Right? Why? This man, intrinsically from within, this man was ethical and moral, and that's how he was trying to look at the world politics. And quite often than not, he forgot that while being moral, it's not that he forgot, he realized that interest of India and ethics and morality, they may not be on the same page. So at times, yes, we saw the governments during those days sacrificing at least a little bit of the national interest because of the ground of ethics and morality. Yes, they did that. I cannot say that wrong as well. At the same point of time, the real school which I am looking at to come into play from the time of Mrs. Gandhi, which is still being carried forward. What is it talking about? No. Secure India's interest first. Forget about all the ethics and morality. None of them. Say Russia-Ukraine war. Just now I said, no one here is innocent. In this backdrop, why should we sacrifice our interest to be moral, to be ethical? Are the Westerners innocent here? They're the biggest culprits here in this whole game. You can't imagine how they backstabbed Ukrainians in 2014. Crimea annexation. And they are the actual catalysts because of whom this whole problem came into being. People today, they are trying to draw relations from 1922, the clash between Ukrainians and the Soviet Union, 1991 and all of those things. I am least bothered. No, the present crisis is not from there. Don't try to trivialize it. Don't try to trivialize the role played by the Western Hemisphere. The present crisis, what we are looking at, is typically created by the Western Hemisphere. And in this backdrop, they want us to sacrifice our interest. Why should we? That's real school. As a result, in the recent past, you have seen quite a few statements being made by Dr. S. Jaishankar, where he said that what Europe purchases, the amount of Russian gas and oil that Europe purchases in an afternoon, India purchases less than that in a whole month. True. You, the Europeans, you, the Westerners, you're telling us to stop buying oil and gas from Russia while you are buying the bulk of it. What hypocrisy is that? Clear? On a number of aspects, in US, we saw one statement being made by him where someone raised the issue of that US report on religious freedom here in India. And they said, ki, what's your statement on this? He said, ki, everyone has a right to take a view, but don't forget, we also have a right to take our views. Right? The kind of things which are being meted out to the minorities in US, blacks and Asians alike, blacks, Asians and Indians alike, what we are facing there, the color discrimination, we also know about that. In USA, the moment the police sees someone black in color, the first assumption they make that that guy must be culprit. You know what happened? 2016. One university professor of Stanford, a black person, an African American, he got stuck outside his house. Why? Somehow he forgot the key inside and he locked the door. Now he was not being able to open the door. He was trying to open the door somehow. Police came, took this guy into custody. Why? Neighbors, they didn't realize that this guy is a university professor in Stanford and this is his house only. He had purchased it recently. And they reported that this guy is trying to break into a house. Police came, saw that this guy is a black. This guy kept on saying that this is my house only. Police didn't bother to listen to him. Just took him into custody. And they are lecturing us on anything. I'm not saying that things are very nice here in India. No, I'm not saying that. But then again, do they have the right to lecture us? I don't know. Clear? That's a typical display of this real school or real politicking as we understand. That why should we be taking the blows lying down? There's no reason for that. Yes, everything is not fair, everything is not right in my country. Fine, let's deal with that. Let's solve that problem. Let's think about it, let's contemplate that and solve it. But this does not mean that someone else who himself has got his hands red in color because of the hands being dipped in blood would be lecturing us. That's also not done. Clear? This also we have been seeing in the recent past. It is in this backdrop that I'm looking at the Russia-Ukraine war. Right? See, yes, it's true that it's since 1991 we are looking at a kind of crisis between Russia and Ukraine. One particular region of Ukraine called Donetsk and Donbas, both. Okay? These are the regions which are predominantly inhabited by, let's also mention Donbas. These are the regions which are predominantly inhabited by Russians. Okay? 70% of the population in both of these regions, these are the regions on the eastern side of Ukraine, eastern and southeastern side of Ukraine. Predominantly inhabited by Russians. 70% of the population is Russian. Mere 30% of the population, they are Ukrainians or Ukrainian speaking. These two languages are separate, are different languages. At the same point of time, ethnically, these two are different people. We think everyone who lived in former Soviet Union, they all are just the same. No, they are not. There are 17 different countries within Soviet Union. Clear? Russia was just one of them. Russia, Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, Ukraine, Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, then Moldova, then Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan. All of these countries were part of the former Soviet Union. Clear? And all of these people, they are different people. In Russia alone, there are at least 5 different ethnicities. Okay? So from here itself, you can understand that again, I'm looking at an ethnic conflict. It's more an ethnic conflict. We, people of India, we know about ethnic conflict. We have the issues here. Clear? Anyway, so this is the issue which started rising since 1991. Prior to 91, the issue was not this much severe because anyway they were under one umbrella, Soviet Union. One major umbrella which was covering all these areas. And the Soviet policy was that everyone should be given equal significance. So yes, these problems were far more in check. But post 1991, these problems just started rising. Whether in Donbass region or in Donetsk region or even in Crimea. Okay? Crimea, continuously we are talking about Crimea. It's a region just like this in Black Sea, on top of Black Sea. If I draw a crude map of the region, it's more like an area which can control the whole of Black Sea. Problem in Crimea was 90% of the population, they were Russian speaking. If in Donbass and Donetsk, the population proportion is 70-30, there it was 90% Russian speaking population. Result, since a long time, Russia has been talking about making these regions autonomous to protect the interests of the Russian ethnicity people, the people belonging to Russian ethnicity. They have been doing that. They have been trying to do that. Okay? But this was on the back burner. This was never so prominent. Yes, in 1991, after immediate separation, after immediate fallout of Soviet Union, because there was chaos everywhere. See, the breakup of Soviet Union was not a planned breakup. All of a sudden, the whole Soviet Union, they got into a severe economic crisis. And this severe economic crisis that caused the complete collapse of Soviet Union. In one single go. This was rising. Gradually this was growing, this problem was growing. Right? Those who were there in my class, we have talked about the Afghan crisis and its impact on breakup of Soviet Union. What happened? Afghanistan is a unique place. There are jokes about Afghanistan. Right? There is one myth, I'm just telling you this myth. This myth is in association with Alexander the Great. I don't know whether we should be calling him the Great or not. 4 feet 9 inch guy. Anyway, yep, that's what his height was, 4 feet 9 inch. Let's come back. His mother, Olympia, he wrote to Alexander that you have been winning all these areas so fast. You even defeated the great Babylonian empire, Darius III. You defeated him so easily, captured Babylon. And you're taking so much of time in capturing a small area of Afghanistan. Why? Why is it happening? The story says, I don't know whether it's a real story or a joke, right? The story says that in response, Alexander sent one bowl of soil from Afghanistan along with a letter. He said, okay, you do one thing, you spread this soil at 4 corners of your palace and be alert at the night time. And tomorrow the next day you'll realize why it's taking so much of time for me to capture Afghanistan properly. When this particular bowl of soil from Afghanistan and this later reached Olympia, mother of Alexander, what she did, she sprayed the soil at 4 corners of her palace, and at night she was alert as per the letter, as the letter suggested. That night, all the guards of her palace revolted. They revolted. They went against the government and the king. So the moral of the story is something is there in the soil of Afghanistan. I'm looking at 26 different ethnicities, right? Normally we think Afghans are Pathans. No, they are not. Mere 40% of Afghanistan, they are Pathans. 60% they are of different ethnicities. And even the Pathans are not one people. There are Kugianis, Momans, Afridis. Shahid Afridi, right? He belongs to the Afridi tribe of the Pathans. There are 12 different tribes among the Pathans. And as for the rest 60% population, you tell me, Hazaras, Tajiks, Uzbeks, Turks, you'll find everything there. Every ethnicity of that region, whole Central Asia, would be found in Afghanistan. In the history, Afghanistan has been peace only when they were in war. When they were fighting outsiders, they were very, very peaceful inside. The Afghans actually loved when the British, they tried to capture Afghanistan. In the history, the British, they tried to capture Afghanistan 3 times. These are the 3 periods when all the Afghans, they came together, they hugged each other, we are brothers, let's fight the British together. That's the population you're looking at, who are only at peace when they are at war. If they don't have outsiders to fight with, they fight among themselves. And Soviet Union, all of a sudden, they decided, okay, fine, we'll go and capture that country. You united them. You did the same mistake what the British did. The British had a cash cow, India. They were looting India and they were doing all that nonsense. What Soviet Union did? They ruined their own economy. One Afghan campaign brought Soviet Union down to its knees. They are outsiders, right? So when they attacked Afghanistan, all the Afghans came together. Okay, we are brothers again. Let's fight the outsiders. And God, they know how to fight. Clear? Condition was so bad in Soviet Union that for last 2 years, 1989 to 1990, 1990 to 1991, for these last 2 years, Soviet Union was not even able to pay the salary of the military. Why do you think there is so much corruption there in that region? Why do you think the world talks about Russian mafia? I know you're good boys and girls, you don't watch movies, right? If you watch Hollywood movies, you'll always see Russians are always mafias. That's the image of the Russians. Russian people, okay, they can do only one thing, killing and looting. That idea came out, this whole culture came up because of this chaos that happened at the time of fall of Soviet Union. So all the issues which were kept under control during the time of Soviet Union, all those issues, all of a sudden, they started rising from 1991 onwards. A typical example is this ethnic conflict. How this, because of this ethnic diversity between the Russians and the Ukrainians, this crisis would start happening from 1991. But again, this was a momentary issue. This has never been the primary concern. Then what happened? In Ukraine, till 2013, there was one president who was very close to Russia. Okay, Yanukovych. He was very close to Russia, and accordingly he was managing the country. Ukraine was one of the closest allies of Russia. Good? Where's the problem then? Problem would be created. What happened? From 2011 onwards, we are looking at a continuous flow of revolutions across the world. It would start with Tunisia for the first time, a very small country in North Africa. In Tunisia, a vegetable vendor, frustrated of his life because this guy had a master's degree. In spite of having master's degree, this guy was forced to sell vegetables. Why? Given the rampant corruption in the country, there was no job. The president was ruling the country for last 30 years and he was doing only one thing, looting. So out of frustration, this guy, he would self-immolate. He would pour kerosene on himself and he'll burn himself. Right? When and this thing was live streamed on YouTube. When this happened, the whole of the country went up in flames. The whole Tunisia went up in flames. After Tunisia, the next country was Egypt. There was one particular president in Egypt called Hosni Mubarak. For last 20 years, 25 years, he was ruling Egypt, and the same story. So now the revolution against Hosni Mubarak in Egypt. Then it would start in Libya. Then in Syria, Arab Spring, Jasmine Revolution or Arab Spring. Gradually, this revolution would start spreading elsewhere in the world as well. And this revolution would spread into the former Soviet bloc countries as well. In Ukraine, we would see the rise of this revolution in the form of Orange Revolution. They would call it Orange Revolution, Colored Revolution or Orange Revolution. Yanukovych would be thrown out. There would be massive riot, and those who were going for the revolt, they were down on the streets. When this revolution started in Ukraine, God knows why, European Union would come forward. And European Union would say that if this revolution succeeds in Ukraine, we will take Ukraine into our fold. We will make Ukraine a part of European Union, and we will ensure economic prosperity of Ukraine. Ukraine won't have to care about its economy anymore. We'll take care of it. Good. NATO comes forward. We know NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, right? NATO comes forward and NATO says, if this revolution succeeds, we will make Ukraine a part of NATO. NATO will provide security cover to Ukraine. Ukraine won't have to care about Russia anymore. And not only that, Ukraine won't have to spend much on defense. NATO will take care of Ukraine's defense. And you make most of your money, you use most of your money for your own development. You don't have to take care of your defense. We'll take care of your defense. Good. Not only that, the then US ambassador in Kiev, the lady who was US ambassador in Ukraine, she would come down on the streets of Kiev. Revolution was going on. She would be seen, she and the staffs of the US diplomatic mission, they would be seen distributing food packets and water pouches among the revolutionaries. Those people who were down on streets, food packets and water pouches were being distributed among them. It was at this point of time when for the first time, the Russian media, they would highlight a name. I can't take the name because obviously we are also streaming online, right? Name of a lady who they would tag as a CIA operative. They would present all the documents that, see, this lady, wherever she was going, in all of those countries, revolution started. So this is not happening naturally, this is being orchestrated. This is being done artificially. This revolution you're looking at, revolution in Ukraine that you're looking at, this is not a spontaneous revolution. This is not a revolution of the common people. Outside elements, they have instigated and they have started this revolution. Why? To answer the why, again I'll take a broader route, broader approach. What are we studying? International relations, right? This is hardly about relations. It's all about politics. World politics. A major part of this world politics is geopolitics. Let's get into geopolitics a little bit. Let's look at one region of Ukraine called Crimea. Before talking about Crimea, let's talk about Black Sea. The countries in and around Black Sea. Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Turkey, Iran, Turkmenistan. Look at the names. All of these countries, they are oil rich. Newer and newer oil fields are being discovered in this region even today. Clear? And pipelines are being laid from this region to Europe for transfer of oil and natural gas, energy supply. If you want to control this energy supply in the future, you need to control Black Sea. Problem is, here in Crimea, exactly at this spot, is a Soviet-era naval base called Sevastopol. And in spite of Ukraine being a separate country, Sevastopol was under Russian Navy. Look at the position of Sevastopol. If you control Sevastopol, you control the whole of Black Sea. You control the whole of Black Sea, you control that flow of energy from this region. Please try and understand, in all these nonsenses in international relations, billions of dollars are spent. Do you think they would spend billions of dollars just like that? There would be an intrinsic reason, a very strong reason behind every action. Try and understand that. Nothing in international politics, nothing in world politics happens just like that. It doesn't. Why? Billions and trillions of dollars are at stake. Clear? So now tell me. So what was actually happening? Yes, what the Russians alleged was true. This revolution was not spontaneous. This revolution was orchestrated. Orchestrated with one single objective: to pool, to wean away, this spelling of wean is this one, to wean away Ukraine from Russia, so that NATO can access Sevastopol, so that the Western Hemisphere can control Black Sea, take over the control of Black Sea from the Russians. This was the whole game plan. That's why that revolution. That's why that statement by European Union. That's why that statement by NATO. That's why the US ambassador, she personally came down on the streets of Kyiv distributing food and water pouches. Why? To sentimentally connect with the people of Ukraine and pull them towards themselves. Part of propaganda, as we understand. That's what was going on here. Russia also realized what's happening. What happened? I told you that the population in Crimea, 90% of the population, they are Russians. We would see a counter-revolution. A revolution was going on in Ukraine. This is a revolution against revolution. A counter-revolution to start in Crimea. People in Crimea now, they would start saying that we don't want to be part of Ukraine anymore. We want to join. You don't have to write these things down. I'll be dictating them. Hold on. So, people here, they would start making these statements that we don't want to be part of Ukraine anymore, we want to join Russia. And what would we see? God knows from where some soldiers would come into play. Soldiers who were not wearing uniforms of any other country, any country for that matter. They were wearing black uniforms. These soldiers would provide protection to the revolutionaries here in Crimea, so that the Ukrainian forces, they cannot enter Crimea. They would stop this entry point. And a referendum, people's vote would be organized in Crimea. In that referendum, in that people's vote, 98% of the Crimeans, they would vote that we want to join Russia. I don't know how much free and fair that election was. But 98% of the people, they voted, official figures, that 98% of the people, they voted in favor of joining Russia. And immediately, the lower house of Russia, Duma, they would pass the resolution making Crimea a part of Russia. They would also build a bridge connecting Russia with Crimea to avoid Ukraine. That map is not to scale, you can understand that gap is not that much, it's a small gap, right? They would use that small gap and they would build a bridge to bridge between Russia and Crimea. So, from 2014 onwards, Crimea is properly in the hands of the Russians. Do you know what happened? EU, NATO, they all came. They prepared a beautiful cake. The Russians came, ate the cake, went away. And in all of these, who are the victims? Common Ukrainians. Clear? Anyway, so after this we would see USA, European Union, they all would impose sanctions on Russia. See the beauty. They all impose sanctions on Russia. Today in USA, they have an act called CAATSA. Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act. CAATSA. 2017. Right? Because of this act, USA tells India that if you buy any weapons or anything from Russia, we will impose sanction on you. Right? When we talk about these S-400 missile defense system or Kamov K-226 helicopters or anything for that matter, they say we can impose sanctions on you. Europe is completely dependent on Russian oil and gas. They have imposed sanctions on Russia, but still they keep on buying oil and gas from Russia. What's happening with them? No, they are okay. So please don't tell us about these hypocrisies. %34% of the Russian oil and gas is purchased by Europe. The largest consumer obviously is China, no doubt. After China, the second largest consumer of Russian oil and gas is Europe itself. And that too, Western Europe. Countries like Germany and those countries there. So now tell me. And they imposed sanction on Russia. What kind of sanction that was, I don't know. They said we would never do trade with you other than doing trade with you. We'll do trade with you, but we'll never say that that's trade. Okay? All that great talk by EU, that if this revolution succeeds, we are going to take Ukraine within our fold, we are going to revolutionize Ukrainian economy, right? All that talk by NATO that if the revolution succeeds, we'll provide protection to Ukraine. Where goes all those talks? They all stopped. Why? The main purpose is gone. The main purpose was Crimea, and Russia has taken that purpose. Who cares about Ukraine now? Let them fend for themselves. This is international politics. This is world politics. 2015, again we would see the Ukrainians would try to take over Sevastopol. And the Russians will beat them back like anything. Ukraine kept on asking for support. Support from NATO, support from Europe. Nothing came. Who cares? This time what happened? A new idea came to NATO. What is the idea? Let's take Ukraine within our fold and let's place ICBMs in Ukraine. Right? Let us be aggressive. Let us take Ukraine within the fold of NATO. See, 2014, NATO said that we would provide security cover to Ukraine. From 2014 to 2022, nothing happened. 21 actually, nothing happened. By end of 21, early 22, NATO would realize, okay, forget about Ukraine, forget about Crimea. Even Ukraine has significance. How Ukraine has significance? Ukraine is very close to southwestern part of Russia. Chechnya and all those regions, they're very close to Ukraine. So let's do one thing. Let's take Ukraine within NATO's fold and let's place our THAAD and other ICBMs in Ukraine. So that in the eventuality of any hostility with Russia, we can immediately destroy Russia. Say someday if China says, okay, we are going to take our missiles to Sri Lanka, we will place our missiles in Sri Lanka, so that if any war with India starts, we won't only attack India from north, we'll be shooting those missiles from down south to India and we'll destroy India. How will you feel like? Nice feeling, right? This is what they started doing here, this time. It was in this backdrop that Russia would raise the issue of Donbass. Why? Told you. This area. That fine. NATO would take over Ukraine and would make Ukraine a base against Russia. Let's capture as much territory of Ukraine as possible so that this does not happen. It was in this backdrop that they would raise this issue once again, the issue of Donbass. That we need to provide protection to those 70% Russian ethnic people. Till now, everyone forgot about them. Till now, no one cared about them. But now, safety and security of Russia is at stake. So this becomes a major issue. Is this actually an issue? Tell me. No. This has been made an issue. The actual thing is far more deep. I'm looking at geopolitics of the world. What I'm seeing is a new caucus coming into play. Russia, China, Iran. I'm looking at the beginning of the new Cold War. That's why all these nonsenses. If you have noticed, very recently, Russia, China and Iran, they have announced a war game, an exercise in Indian Ocean, right? That's a new grouping that's coming up. Pakistan is nothing here. Pakistan is a new territory of China. Whenever they want, Pakistan will join them. So forget about Pakistan. Your politicians may keep on showing you Pakistan, but that's actually insignificant. Actual play lies here in this new grouping that's coming up. Russia, China, Iran. Till now you were talking about Quad. Till now you were talking about AUKUS. Now they are coming up with their own game plan. China is already beyond reach of USA. USA knows they cannot control China. Their point is Russia should also not gain that much prominence as China has. If both of them becomes so huge, so potent, USA knows it will lose its #1 position. So they cannot allow Russia to grow. China has already grown. China has already grown beyond the capacity of USA. USA cannot control China anymore. But they cannot allow Russia to grow as well. So now they have to control Russia to keep this newly formed group of China, Russia and Iran somewhat under control, to maintain the balance in the new Cold War. That's what we are looking at. Clear? Till now what we have been talking about, what we have been reading, that's frivolous. That's never pointing. You show me one article in any one newspaper, especially the international articles, which is showing me this real picture, which is connecting all the dots. Guys, your training has already started. You know what happens, how this whole game plan plays out in UPSC? Why UPSC has included all these aspects in the syllabus? So that you start knowing about these things from this stage only. So that upon your selection, they don't have to make you aware about these basics anymore. They can deal with the advanced things then. They need you to clear these basics right now. So please go beyond those newspaper articles. They are not sufficient, they are not enough. They're showing you half-hearted pictures. Clear? They're showing you the picture of a house from one side. Okay? They have painted one side and they're showing the picture of that side of the house. The rest of the house is actually broken. Before you buy the house, please see the house yourself. That's what is happening. So now tell me who's innocent in this whole game plan? Even not them. When for the first time, no, not even Russians. When for the first time that NATO came forward, today this Vladimir Zelensky, he is saying that we don't want to be part of NATO anymore. It was you who was also shouting that we want to join NATO, we want to join NATO. You knew very well about the security issues. You're not the only country who's outside NATO in Europe. Finland was outside NATO. So was Sweden. So many other countries, they were outside NATO. So what? It was you, the Ukrainians or the Ukrainian policymakers who made your own people pawn into this game. How come you're innocent? Tell me. You, the Ukrainian policymakers, out of your greed to sit on the high tables of world politics, you thought, okay, NATO will come and will teach the Russians a lesson. Okay, fine, go teach the Russians a lesson. You made your people a pawn. All the three parties here, whether the Western Hemisphere, or the Ukrainians, or the Russians, they all have their hands dirty. No one is innocent in this. In 2014, this revolution succeeded, right? New government came to power in Ukraine. EU was not bothered about economic prosperity of Ukraine ever. EU never took Ukraine into their fold. So what was Ukraine doing? How were they managing their economy? Do you know what they did? All the Soviet era weapons industries which were there in Ukraine, they revived them. They revived those Soviet era weapons industries and started selling weapons to the outside world. They were selling weapons to others without realizing that someday these weapons can come back to haunt themselves. That's what is happening. So who's innocent here? I don't see anyone innocent here. So in this backdrop, you tell me, why should we sacrifice our interest? In this whole story, did you ever feel any emotional affinity to any side? That okay, they are the bicharas here. For their sake, we should sacrifice. No one is a bichara here. They were trying to play chess. One side is winning, one side is losing. Fine, they knew what is at stake. So what's our fault? Clear? This is Russia-Ukraine war. Clear? Let's write it down in brief. I'm using very, very simple language and the language for your own understanding. I'm not using any formal language for notes making in that sense. What we are looking at is part of the larger game plan of Cold War 2.0. Of Cold War 2.0. If on one side we are looking at NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, the demographic quad, AUKUS, Australia, Ukraine, US. AUKUS, Australia, UK, US. That's why AUKUS, na? A for Australia, UK, United Kingdom, US, United States. That's AUKUS. UK. Australia, UK, US. And the unnamed grouping of India, Israel, UAE and USA. UAE and USA. For your information, this year in the month of February, for the first time this grouping had a virtual meeting. I'm looking at another quad, not a democratic quad, right? But I'm looking at another quad forming on the western side of India. How come UAE and Israel in the same group? Aren't they enemies? Not anymore. You're forgetting Abraham Accords. Okay? Not anymore. Now they're uniting forces, they're joining forces to fight against the Shias, Iranians. Iran is the common enemy now on that side. This is international politics. No one is a permanent enemy, no one is a permanent friend. This is politics. Clear? The only difference is there's no party color here. They're countries. And the newly emerging bloc of China, Russia, Iran. Put a full stop. China being world number 2, keep on writing. China being world number 2 is already beyond control of USA. Put a full stop. In fact, comma, the way Chinese products have inundated. Inundated means? Flooded. Inundated the American domestic market. That they cannot avoid or ignore China anymore. Put a full stop. Donald Trump administration tried to change this course by imposing high taxes on imports from China. But failed. Rather, China being the number one consumer of US agricultural products, comma, this policy hurt Donald Trump very badly. You know what happened? We talked about this in the class. See, USA is the largest producer of soybean in the world. Also, wheat production in USA is phenomenal. Right? Wheat and corn production in USA is phenomenal. Who's the largest consumer of this? China. Chinese, they don't consume it for their own eating purpose. No. What they do, they import the soybean from USA, they import the corn from USA, process it, manufacture tinned foods, sell it back to USA. Clear? So the US, they prepare the food, they actually produce the food, but now for eating purposes, they're dependent on the Chinese. So when Donald Trump, he started imposing these high taxes, what happened? Donald Trump's traditional support base was the agrarian community of Iowa and other states, which are agricultural states. China also imposed tax on agricultural imports from USA. And they started buying soybean and other things from India. Now the US farmers got angry with Donald Trump and he lost the election. So do you realize what happened here? This is what is going on. We see anything with simple eyes. No, please. You have grown up enough. Look into the reality behind the picture. The picture is half of what is happening. Get behind it. Clear? Chalo, let's come back. I'll give me the last line here. Last line, please.
This policy was Donald Trump very bad.
Put a full stop. However, today the realization is that Russia cannot be allowed to grow farther, because in that case, the newly formed grouping of Russia, China, Iran would dethrone USA from the number one spot, or from the number one position. It is in this backdrop that we are looking at the beginning of the New Age Cold War. For your information, please try and understand, time has come for India to adopt NAM again, non-alignment again. And what you're looking at in the approach of Dr. S. Jaishankar is a typical display of that. This time the policy of non-alignment is not like the Nehruvian policy of non-alignment. Nehruvian policy of non-alignment was ethical and moral. This time the policy of non-alignment would be driven by real politicking, India's own interest. And that's exactly what we are looking at in the posturing of Dr. S. Jaishankar. There's a new policy of non-alignment again, that no, we are neither aligned with the US or aligned with the Russians or Chinese. We will do only what suits our own interests, that's it. Clear? See, what you think today, international relations is one such area that what you can think today, believe me, that has already happened yesterday. You have to be on your toes. One thing for sure, to understand these things, you need to know the history, no doubt about it. But then again, after knowing the history, now be in the present. Be in the present and think of the future. you have to contemplate what's going to happen. Problem is, in India, for a long period of time, we have seen a vacuum. From 2012 to 2020, for 8 long years, in India's foreign policy making, there has been a vacuum. This was also accepted by the present foreign minister, the present Minister of External Affairs, Dr. S. Jaishankar, in 2019. 4th of November 2019, Dr. S. Jaishankar was delivering the 4th Ramnath Goenka Memorial Lecture. Who's Ramnath Goenka? A pioneer in Indian journalism and the founder of Indian Express, the newspaper. Okay? After his death, in his memory, this Ramnath Goenka Memorial Lecture has been instituted. On 2019, 4th of November 2019, Dr. S. Jaishankar was delivering the 4th Ramnath Goenka Memorial Lecture. While delivering this lecture, Dr. S. Jaishankar, he talked about evolution of India's foreign policy. Among you, how many students whom I have taken the international relations class? I do see a few faces here. While talking about evolution of India's foreign policy, we had a separate section for this. Okay, I am looking at 6 phases as talked about by Dr. S. Jaishankar. Right? He says that phase 1, policy era of ideological optimism. Right? We were too ideological, we were moral, and we were optimistic that everything should happen for good. Please don't, no. You were naive. Right? Next phase. He calls this the era of realism. Realism means where the country started realizing what actually it is. Phase 3. A period dominated by Indira doctrine. He calls this the era of regional hegemony, where in South Asia we imposed ourselves that we are the boss. You, the small countries, you have to listen to what we are telling you to do. An era dominated by 3 people. At the head of the 3, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, Dr. K. Shankar, R.N. Kao, Rameshwar Nath Kao. Who are they? Rameshwar Nath Kao, an IPS officer, India's #1 spy master, who would ultimately set up research and analysis wings. Till his death, till the very end, he will be there by Mrs. Gandhi's side. And Dr. K. Shankar. Till Mrs. Gandhi's death, he will also be there on Mrs. Gandhi's side. And these 3 people, they would be shaping India's foreign policy during this time. An era of regional hegemony. You small countries, you Sri Lanka, you Bangladesh, you Pakistan, you have to do whatever we tell you to do. Forget about what you want. Sorry. Then comes he calls this era of radical rethinking. We started rethinking our position and we started doing a lot of things which were unthinkable to us. Radical rethinking. Clear? Then he says that from the year 2000 to 2014, India gained the position of a counterbalance to China. Clear? That's the 5th stage. Uniqueness is about the sixth stage. He talks about the period from 2014 till 2019. Being a typical diplomat, he does not criticize the government. How can he criticize the government of whom he himself was part of? Then what did he do? He just did not talk about India. There is one thing for you to learn. Where you cannot defend the government, learn to keep quiet. Learn to divert the attention. What did he do? He says this is a period where regional players like Russia and Japan started gaining prominence. True. India's foreign minister, talking about evolution of India's foreign policy, forgets to mention India. No, he didn't forget to mention India. He knew we cannot mention India here. Because we have been taking selfies during that time. Sorry. Clear? Post 2019, again I'm looking at that rise. Please try and understand, you need experts to deal with the expert area, the technical areas. Clear? So we needed the expert. And again, from the end of 2019 or from 2020 onwards, we are looking India to reshape its policies once again. And now we are looking at the rise of non-alignment 2.0. Clear? Chalo, give me the last line, please. The beginning of New Age Cold War. It was in this backdrop that we need to look into the Russia-Ukraine war. The Russia-Ukraine war. Normally, people tend to link the present developments with the ethnic conflict that has been going on in the region since long. We have also seen newspaper articles linking the present crisis with the 1922 internal crisis within Soviet Union. Now stop, guys. Please have some senses. Yes, I have gone through a number of articles, newspaper articles, where they have been talking about how in 1922, under Stalin, Lenin was gone by this time. 1922, Lenin was gone. It was Stalin who was at the head of Soviet Union. Stalin would try to revolutionize Soviet agricultural system. Why I'm talking about this? Because this will link with my next topic, Sri Lanka crisis. Okay? Yes, Stalin would try to do something nonsense in Soviet Union in 1922, and as a result, there would be massive hunger and famine, which will break out in Soviet Union. More than 1 million people, 10 lakh people would die in the process. Yep, we take Joseph Stalin, then Harry S. Truman, that Winston Churchill as great people, right? They're making a movie on Winston Churchill. Do you know how great Winston Churchill was? How nicely he tortured the Indians? Okay? They're making movies on that. Anyway, none of them were good people. Joseph Stalin would die in 1953. After 3 years of his death, just imagine, till the point of time this man was alive, no one had the courage to say anything against him. After 3 years of his death, now Soviet Union will officially accept that during his rule, Stalin has killed 30 lakh people. We call Hitler a devil because he killed 6 lakh Jews. No, that was also wrong. Killing 6 lakh Jews was no right thing to do. Right? But tell me about Joseph Stalin, who killed 30 lakh people there. And 10 lakh out of them would die this time. In 1922, because of this huge famine. The Britishers, Winston Churchill, right? 1942, the Great Bengal Famine. Today, the state of West Bengal, Jharkhand, Orissa, Bihar, Bangladesh, part of Assam, Tripura, Chhattisgarh, all engulfed in famine. How many people died? Official estimates 5 lakh, unofficial estimates 15 lakh. 3 times the official estimate. And Winston Churchill is a good person. Obviously, killed Indians. No, one logic we can use. He was actually doing population control in India. He knew we would be growing in such a large scale, so he was doing population control at that point of time. Anyway, let's not get into that. Let's not trivialize what these people they did actually. Anyway, number of people they link this particular problem with the present crisis. Why? The severity of this problem happened in Ukraine, because Ukraine was the most agriculturally prosperous region at that point of time. So when all these idiotic changes were being brought in, Ukraine was a severe most affected. Problem: Joseph Stalin was not a Russian. Take out your phones, search for Joseph Stalin. He was a Georgian. There's a country called Georgia, na? He's from that country. He's a Georgian. He's not a Russian. So how can I link the action of a Georgian with Russia-Ukraine crisis? These people forget that. They just link with anything. Don't do that. Clear? Let's move forward.
the crisis in Soviet Union.
Which led to? Have we mentioned that it led to the death of 1 million people?
No, sir.
Okay, which led to the death of? Which led to the death of? Which led to the death of 1 million people? 1 million people in the famine that will occur. In the famine that will occur. Put a full stop. Next paragraph. In reality, the roots of this crisis, in reality, the roots of this crisis can be found in the recent Crimean crisis. In the recent Crimean crisis. It was in 2014. It was in 2014, in the backdrop of Jasmine Revolution and Arab Spring, in the backdrop of Jasmine Revolution and Arab Spring, wait a minute. Jasmine Revolution and Arab Spring, that a colored revolution called Orange Revolution would start in Ukraine, and the then President of Ukraine, who was pro-Russian, called Yanukovych, would be thrown not only out of power but also out of country. Would be thrown not only out of power but also out of country. Would be thrown not only out of power but also out of country. Put a full stop. It was during this time that we would see NATO and European Union to make a ploy, P-L-O-Y, to make a ploy, P-L-O-Y, to make a ploy to get control, to make a ploy to get control of Crimea and the port Sevastopol. And the port Sevastopol. Put a full stop. If we look deep down into it, if we look deep down into it, the newly rising Cold War politics, the newly rising Cold War politics and the effort to control Black Sea, and the energy supply from the region, becomes clearer to us. Put a full stop. Hence, no wonder that Russia would also make a ploy, and using the highly debatable referendum, which was voted by the people of Crimea, would be used to annex the region by the Russians. Annex, annex the region by the Russians. Annex means to attach it with themselves, right? To annex the region by the Russians. Put a full stop. Today, all of these factors, number one, the rising clout of China, Russia, Iran, How come this rising clout we are looking at? Just see what's happening. One country after another is getting into this lobby. Iraq has already got into this lobby. Why? Majority of the population of Iraq, they are Shias. Right? In Iraq, 15% minority are Kurdish people, Kurds. 30% are Sunnis. Saddam Hussein was a Sunni, but he was part of the minority community. Remaining 55% of the population, they are Shias. Result today, when democracy has come back to Iraq, naturally the majority community, they are holding the power. The Shias are holding the power. Clear? Syria, again a Shia country. The ruling dynasty, Assad dynasty, the person who's the president, he calls himself the president. Just imagine his father was the president. When his father died, his father made him the president. It's monarchy, yaar. Anyway, presidency. Bashar al-Assad, right? They are also close to Iranians and Russians. Gradually, one country after another. Yemen. Who are controlling Yemen right now? A minority tribal community called Houthis. And these Houthis are Shias. Till now, our understanding was that Iran, what kind of power are they? They have huge amount of political power to carry. You have no idea what kind of power they carry. I know a lot of people, lot of you are thinking, okay, China, Russia, Iran. Yes, Iran. Azerbaijan. In the recent past, there was a war between Azerbaijan and Armenia 2 years back, right? Do you know? Yes, Azerbaijan took help from Turkey. Being a Muslim country, they took help from Turkey. But actually, Azerbaijan is close to both Iran and Russia. Similarly, Georgia, close to Russia. Armenia, close to Russia. So just imagine, I'm just putting these countries here, if I may. China, Russia. Okay? Now see. This whole belt is being controlled by the lobby. Not a single country is out of that. Not a single country is out of that block. So now do you realize how strong this lobby is? And Pakistan, well, how can I miss? A country where Mandarin is an official language today. Chinese yuan is an official currency today. They should call themselves, a new province of China, rather than autonomous territory of China. So now do you realize what's happening? That's why Iran. Now do you realize how this Cold War is again being played? This is being played in front of you and you don't have any idea. That's why this is Cold War. This has already started. You're already 3 years late. This started in 2019. Okay, let's come back. Yep.
So correct me if I'm wrong. So the majority population of Iran are Sunnis.
Shias. See the conflict between the two sides. Iran on one hand and Saudi Arabia on the other. Saudi Arabia, UAE, they control the Sunni bloc. Okay. Whereas Iran controls the Shia bloc. Well, the discussion is quite long, pretty long. Don't expect me to do that discussion today. Because in that case, let's cancel all the other classes. Let's cancel my flight as well. And let's carry on with the discussion of Shia-Sunni conflict. That will take at least 3 hours of discussion. Started a long time back now. Since the time of Hazrat Ali, I would have to talk about. Since then, I would have to talk about. So let's come back. Fine. Now,
The rising cloud of China, Russia.
just read the whole sentence, please.
The rising cloud of China, Russia, Iran.
In-
Points you are telling points.
Okay. Okay. Point number 1 is this, rising cloud of China, Russia and Iran. Number 2, control of Black Sea. Control of Black Sea geopolitically. Control of Black Sea geopolitically. And controlling the flow of energy. Controlling the flow of energy from the region to Western Europe. From the region to Western Europe. Number 3, the power tussle for the future. The power tussle for the future in between the Western Bloc, consisting of USA, UK, Germany, France, etc. Consisting of USA, UK, Germany, France, etc. And Russia, China, Iran on the other hand. And Russia, China, Iran on the other hand. Okay, these are the 3 critical aspects here which ultimately led to this crisis. So please, a lot is happening here. It's not just a war, it's practically, we are looking at something mushrooming. And here a propaganda war is also going on. Don't fall victim to that. Clear? A lot of what you're reading is part of the propaganda campaign. In India, what has happened is, because of a lull in Indian media, our narrative is controlled most or more by the Western media. So the way we are looking at this war is more the point of view of the Western media. Because our media people, they know only one thing, how to dance. They don't create content on their own. They dance. Right? The content is being created by the Western media and they are dancing to the tune. But that content which is being prepared by the Western media is a part of their propaganda campaign. Please don't fall victim to that. Even if you get into Russian media, if you start watching RT and other such televisions, they'll be presenting their version. That too is propaganda. Don't fall victim to the propaganda of any of the sides. Take a chill pill, relax, think. You will get the answer from your own understandings. Clear? That's this issue. Russia, Ukraine. I'm not intentionally deliberating more on this topic. The next topic is economic crisis in Sri Lanka, but I would like to take a break here, if possible. Right? In the next half, what we'll do, I'll take one topic from here, right? Then I'll be going for a few topics from Indian society as well. So the issue of death penalty, that's again on the discussion. We need to talk about that, right? So these kind of few things are there which we need to look into. Those areas I'll be taking up here in the class. At the same point of time, I'm also going to provide you with a list of topics and some content. Please do bother to go through them. Okay, we still have some time. Today is 9th of May, right? 22 days is still remaining here in the month of May, 4 days there in the month of June. So 26 days we still have. Please, let's use that. Chalo, thank you. 15-20 minutes, good enough? Thank you.
Normal charges, C type.
Normal charger. $115?
Bag is there, sir.
Yeah, just a bag. On the bed only.
Srikanth is there.
Yeah. Guys, sorry, said 20 minutes, but took 10 minutes extra. So I was having one, I got one question. Yeah, please. Okay, that's the first question. And the second question? Right. The question is, it's genuinely unique question, that whether economy drives politics or the politics drives economy. See, what it should be is that the economy should be driving politics. Right? Why so? Because at the end of any given day, consumers need to survive. Let me explain this how and why. See, there is nothing called capitalistic economy or that kind of thing. Oh, please, those Marxists, they would keep on talking about capitalism and all that thing. Let's not get into that. Those from sociology, they know that we study capitalism as well, of Karl Marx. That's a different thing altogether. What is actually there is called market economy. There are two models of development, market economy and the socialistic model of development. These are the two models of development. There's nothing that kind of capitalistic model or something of that sort, no. Whether it's market economy or it's socialistic economy, in both the economies, the driving force is the consumer. Say tomorrow, in analog, say here in analog, we are putting in all the efforts, we are trying to put in all the best possible efforts, we are being honest with our initiative and everything. But say in spite of all the best efforts, we are not being able to spread the information properly. Why? Because the channels for flowing information, they are controlled. They're controlled, and those who are controlling the flow of information, they are favoring only one or two players. Result, most of the players, they are not being able to flow the information about what they are doing, how they are doing. Would the consumer get to know about all my best efforts? No. Why? Since the channels for flowing information, they are blocked. So in spite of all the best efforts, I would never be able to convey my message to them properly. Do you know this completely goes against the idea of perfectly competitive market? In a perfectly competitive market, everyone should be having every information. The buyers should also know what they are buying, what all things are there. The sellers should also be having all the informations about the buyers, their preferences and everything. That's perfect competition. At the same point of time, say, the controllers of the market, they're so biased that they created certain conditions because of which I do not have proper market access even. Result, what will happen? Say I'm trying to sell something. Achha, let me ask you people only. You have come to a coaching institute, taken admission. What is the amount of GST that you have paid on the fees of the coaching? 18%. 18% GST. What is the amount of GST that you pay in a bar? 5% GST. You want to tell me that the bar is a necessity and the coaching is a luxury? Now do you realize what's happening? Well, being a student from sociology, I must admit, education is always a luxury. It's always for the elite. No doubt about it. You study too much, you come to know too much, you don't trust anyone. That's what happens. So, yes, it's a luxury. Let's not get into that. Anyway, let's come back. So, what's happening at the end of the day? When the market forces they start controlling the market and they don't give everyone equal opportunity, the perfectly competitive market starts dying down. And instead of a perfectly competitive market, what rises is oligopoly or monopolistic competition, where only a few, they start controlling the market. There was a time when we had so many players in the telecom sector. And as a result, there was a feature of competitive pricing. Pricing was coming down. Pricing in telecom sector was coming down. Right? Today, how many players do you have? Effectively 2, practically 3. Because the third player, Vodafone Idea, they're dying down. They're dying out. The 2 players who are having the market share, Reliance and Airtel, okay, out of them, Airtel is having the market hold, or they're being still a strong player because they are making windfall profit in Africa. That windfall profit that they're making in Africa, they're bringing that profit here in India, and that's how they're surviving here in India. Or else they're making huge loss here in India. Once Vodafone Idea moves out of the market, now tell me what's going to happen to you. Do you know, there was a time when we used to thump our chest that we have the cheapest data in the world. Data was so cheap. Today per GB data it actually costs 51 rupees. In Bangladesh, per GB data costs 26 rupees in Indian currency. You're already paying more. Yep.
Sir, but the government newspapers say that the competitive price is reduced so that to encourage new players in the bidding process.
Let the bidding take place in 5G process, let the players come in. Problem is, it's the government only who has killed one of the largest players, MTNL and BSNL. I don't know how much effective they were, but the presence of MTNL and BSNL was a very big protector. It was a big shield for the common consumer. That shield is missing now. And we all are volatile to the other players. Now tell me from the point of consumerism, is this perfectly competitive market? So what's happening here in India? I'm saying at the end of the day, politics driving economy. And yes, I cannot deny that on certain parameters, we are at a very bad stage. Right? The head of NSSO and the chief economist of NSSO was fired in 2019, no doubt, but the report that they prepared was right. We are looking at an unemployment scenario which is genuinely scary. Guys, please try and understand, we talk so much about human capital and demographic dividend. Dividend is always drawn from capital. Please try and understand the logic here. Dividend is always drawn from the capital. To draw that demographic dividend, we need to build the human capital. Have we been able to build the human capital? So what we are looking at is a population surge and a demographic burden, not the human capital. To convert that into human capital, we need to skill them, whether hard skill or soft skill. Hard skill means vocational skilling. Soft skills, say writing skill, communication skill, whether verbal communication, non-verbal communication, at the same point of time leadership training, entrepreneurial skills, them being imparted, these are the soft skills. I can challenge any of you right now, come on stage, teach me about one topic. The topic you're most comfortable with. Anyone right now. Do you know what you're fearful of? Verbal communication. It's not so easy. I still recall my first day in college. I was, at that point of time, I joined as an ad hoc lecturer in a college in Delhi. The first day in class, some 40-45 scary faces looking at me, a new guy entering the class. My knees were actually shaking. Then I also do remember the first day I went into ALS, in a class in ALS. 500 students sitting in front of me. The second day when my knees started shaking. 500 students, it's a sea of heads. So even verbal communication is not something which comes very, very easily to us. We need to master those. So that's what the scenario is. So I wish I have been able to properly elaborate the idea here that yes, why economy should be driving politics rather than politics driving economy, right? Once the economic interest that starts controlling, when the political interest starts controlling economy, that becomes detrimental for the economy altogether, right? It's always better to leave the market as it is. Please don't poke too much within the market. Let the market play, it will play properly. See, from 1991 onwards, the idea that we have been mooting and the way that the way we have been thinking, generally the idea is that the government has no business in doing business. The best role for the government is, at best, to be a catalyst of growth and development. These are two separate concepts. Growth is a separate concept, development is a separate concept. Being a student of sociology and being a teacher of Indian society, I must admit, we should be having these ideas clear. When we talk about growth, it's just a numerical growth or accumulation of wealth that we are looking at. Rate of growth of GDP. What will happen with rate of growth of GDP? We start chest thumping with okay, this is the rate of growth of GDP, that's there. What will happen with that? Unless and until the amount of wealth that has been accumulated, that wealth is now used for public good. Article 39B and 39C of Indian Constitution, DPSP. Take out your phones, search for 39B and 39C. practically against concentration of wealth, right? Someone was saying about concentration of wealth. That whatever wealth is generated, that should be used for public good. That's the idea. That's the concept of development. Or else growth is just a numeric factor. Clear? That growth means nothing unless and until that enters into market benefits. Clear? So that's where the things stand. So please try and understand essentially the model of market economy and the model of socialistic development, they are not antagonistic to each other. No, they are not. They both want the common people to survive, because at the end of the day, it is the common people who's going to be the consumer, is the common people who's also going to be the producer. I don't want the government to be a producer. If the government becomes a producer, look at Indian Railways. That production process will never be sincere. Clear? And not just in India. You look at the railway system anywhere, in any country. Talk about the railway system in USA. Hardly anyone uses that. Clear? So that's the condition. And by railway, I'm not talking about urban railway, metro railway, suburban railway. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about long distance transportation. Look at the services there. And across the world, not just India. So it's always preferable that the government should not be in production business. It should be the common person who should be the producer. It's the common person who should be the consumer as well. But for that, the common person needs to survive first. Clear? That's where the whole thing lies. Chalo, let's come back. This question was genuinely interesting. That's why I delved into it, because this is bordering between Indian society and Indian economy. They both are getting merged here. That's why I took it up here in the class. Okay. Achha, we were talking about the economic crisis in Sri Lanka. That's the topic that we said that after the break we will start with. Fine. What happened in Sri Lanka? All of a sudden we came to know that the Rajapaksa brothers are so bad. 3 years back, 2019 election, they were having the Rajapaksa brothers on their head and they were dancing. What happened all of a sudden? Why? This is not distress, this is disaster. Don't trivialize it.
He stopped fertilizer import so that much of its import is going for fertilizer.
Drastically affected after the COVID.
Okay.
They are not able to meet the import.
So he switched to organic farming.
Good. Someone at least is conceptually on the right track. See what happened. Sri Lanka is considerably dependent on tourism. Nearly 16% of Sri Lanka's GDP comes from tourism. And as a result, a good amount of foreign exchange was earned through tourism. When people, they used to come to Sri Lanka for tourism purposes, they used to bring in foreign exchange with them. They used to spend that foreign exchange in Sri Lanka. And as a result, they used to earn good amount of foreign exchange through tourism. What happened with COVID-19, the tourism industry was particularly bad hit. Right? Tourism industry across the world got butchered. Result, that foreign exchange which used to come to Sri Lanka through tourism, that stopped. And this didn't stop in 1 year. This went on for 2 years. From March 2020 to March 2022, For 2 long years, this whole aspect, it went on across the world, right? Result, by these 2 years, yes, foreign exchange reserve was in a very bad state in Sri Lanka. Now, Sri Lanka as a country, they were food self-sufficient, no doubt, but they were importing fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides and everything from outside, India and other countries, China, no doubt. Here, I need to talk about one more aspect. Why the foreign exchange reserve has never been strong in Sri Lanka? No, exports is there. They are one of the good exporters of tea. Right. No, this is a very wrong idea. I have been hearing this, that a lot of people, they are saying that it's all about freebies. It's all about the development model. No, it's not about the development model. Who's not a development oriented country? Who's not a welfare oriented model? Is USA not a welfare oriented model? You tell me about Obamacare. What was that? Free healthcare services. Do you know the person behind, the actual brain behind Obamacare is an Indian who's also the brain behind RSBY, Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana, which has been rechristened today as Ayushman Bharat? I had the privilege of interviewing him once. I know that person very closely. He's a former IAS officer. He has also been India's Coal Secretary at once. When RSBY was a major success, at first, the Obama administration requested him, ki, enough, you please come and join us. You resign there, come and join us. He refused. Then the Obama administration requested Dr. Manmohan Singh government, ki, please send him for 3 months to us on sabbatical. He went on a sabbatical to USA. He was the primary brain behind Obamacare. So is USA not a welfare model?
Mainly focus on the welfare rather than the domestic production.
This is a very wrong idea. If you can properly target your welfare model will become the primary force to generate wealth, for transfusion of wealth. There are 2 models of development. I was talking about development, right? See, 2 schools of economists. First school of economists, welfare economists, Amartya Sen and Jadre. Jadre also writes a lot of articles in the Hindu. You read his name as Jean Drèze. It's actually Jadre, he's a French. Okay? What are they saying? Simple idea. If this is the population of India, give money to them. Gradually this money will go up. The government gives money through welfare model, through DBT, direct benefit transfers to the common man. Is the common man going to eat the money? Is the common man going to take that money to Swiss bank account? The first thing the common man is going to do, he's going to buy something. Production increases. Please don't become a victim of propaganda. There are schools of people who, just to justify their own point of view, talking a lot of nonsense. That has got nothing to do with academics. This is one model of development through direct benefit transfer. Do you know the primary tool because of which India had phenomenal success of bringing a lot of people out of the clutches of poverty? MG Narega. And where did these people go? They became consumers. They became consumers which fueled Indian economy further. So what are you saying? You're saying this because you're looking at a passport size photograph. You're not even looking at the whole picture.
Sir, in Andhra Pradesh, they are mostly giving the subsidy to direct benefits transfer.
See, again, you're talking about something where politics is driving economy. Hold. Right? The world runs in moderation. Too much of anything is bad. If you make a person drink too much of the nectar, amrit as it is called, even that guy is going to die out of indigestion. Right? Too much of anything is bad. You need to know when you need to stop. Right? The other model of development that we talk about is the growth model given by another economist, Professor Jagdish Bhagwati, called trickle-down approach. The idea is give the money to them. Why? Because they'll invest the money. And the money will start coming down from this route. These are two models of development. The bottoms-up approach called welfare model. The trickle-down approach called growth-oriented model. Two schools of economists, Amartya Sen and Jadre, Professor Jagdish Bhagwati. Problem is, this model has already proved itself to be a failure. Why? No. When you give money to them, it's never necessary that they are going to invest the money in this country's economy. They can take the money to somewhere else. In last 3 years, over 6 lakh high net worth individuals from India has shifted from India with their money. So the money that was given to them, that money did not got invested here in India, that money got invested elsewhere. So tell me the benefit to Indian economy. The government gives you, say, Bharat Biotech. I should not be taking any names here. Number of companies who got advantages from government of India. Low cost, low interest loans, subsidized loans, big orders so that they thrive, they help Indian economy to grow. What happened? They took the advantage from India, from government of India, developed their business and took the money out of India then. So which model failed? And you're talking against welfare approach. Because you didn't study here. You've been living in a fool's paradise. Clear? These are two models of development that I'm looking at. Fine, let's come back. Now see what happened. No, this is not what happened in Sri Lanka. This is not the problem of Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka's problem lies somewhere way back. This started from the Mahinda Rajapaksa reign, 2010. What I'm looking at is, just now I was talking about confluence between Indian society and economy. Let's talk about confluence between international relations and economy. Debt trap diplomacy, China. Let's see what happened. Let's see how economy actually operates. See, economy is more like a wheel, a smooth running wheel. Don't poke too much to the wheel. Let it move. If it keeps on moving, it will move on in a very, very symphonic way. Let that operation go on. Let's see what happens. Say Government of India takes a good amount of loan, say $100 billion of loan from World Bank. Maybe a big infrastructure project is coming up. All the capital cities are going to be connected by highway network. Right? From Delhi to Lucknow, Lucknow to Patna, Patna to Kolkata, Kolkata to Bhubaneswar, Bhubaneswar to Hyderabad, Hyderabad to Bengaluru, Bengaluru to Chennai, Chennai to Thiruvananthapuram. Maybe even crisscrossings are also happening. Right? So I'm looking at that kind of a highway network which is being built by the National Highway Authority of India, NHAI. And for that, the Government of India takes $100 billion of loan from World Bank. See what happens as a result. See, what will NHAI do? They'll be the supervisory authority. They'll give this as contract to the other developers. Say 4 developers got the contract. Larsen & Toubro, DFL, right? Right? DFL, right? DLF, God knows some others, right? So 4 major developers, they got the contract to build this highway in phases. Okay? What happens? NHAI transfers this $100 billion to 4 different companies. Company A, Company B, Company C, Company D. What are they supposed to do? They are supposed to build highways, right? The first thing that these companies would do, they would hire engineers, civil engineers. Why? To do the survey. Do the survey from where the highway can be constructed, to understand that. And then to design the highway. Right? So, jobs. First thing that they do, jobs. Hiring. Once that survey and everything is being done, even at the time of the survey, they need to do certain purchases. Why? How would these engineers move? For that they need to buy jeeps and all these things, four-wheelers and all these things, so that the engineers and all, they can move freely. They need to construct field offices, right? So already an amount of investment would happen, right? Already purchase of automobile. Now they would purchase heavy earth movers, stone crushers, other raw materials that they need, cement, steel, and all of these things they would keep on purchasing. So they start purchasing raw materials. They would also be employing other people now. Why? Construction workers. Who would do the actual construction?
Sir, these were all coming from China.
All coming from?
China.
Why?
Example number product.
Alright, let's talk about India first here. We'll go to Sri Lanka later on. Okay? So these companies, they would be recruiting laborers and workers, construction workers and all. So further job creation. Those people who are getting salaries and jobs and salaries, what would they do? Are they going to take the money back home and then start eating the money? They'll go and they'll spend the money. They themselves will start buying automobiles. They'll buy real estate. They'll buy fast-moving consumer goods. They'll be buying fridge, they'll be buying TV, AC machines. All of these things they'll be buying. What's happening? Production is increasing. See, automobile here, automobile here. Across there would be automobiles. Result, production in automobile increases. So job increases in automobile sector now. When job increases in the automobile sector, more people get hired. They also start getting bigger salary. They also start buying automobiles. Things start fueling each other. This is economy. So once you infuse the cash, that cash starts multiplying itself. Do you know what happens with the money that you put into your savings account? Money multiplier effect. That's what I'm talking about. Say there is a man having 1 lakh rupees in his bank account. What's the cash reserve ratio right now? 4.5. They have increased a little bit now, recently, 0.5. So out of this 1 lakh rupees, the bank needs to keep 4.5%. That is 4,500 rupees with itself as cash. Then there would be SLR, other aspects, repo rate, reverse repo, but those are not cashes which are being stacked. No. Cash being stacked is only in the form of CRR, cash reserve ratio. The remaining amount, 95,500 rupees, the bank is free to give that amount as loan to someone else. And the bank does that. So you earned a salary of 1 lakh rupees, you put it in the bank. Out of that 1 lakh rupees, 4,500 rupees is written by the bank, and the bank gives someone, some Mr. X, as a loan of 95,500 rupees. That person gets the money, 95,500 rupees. Now he again makes good use of that money, and say whatever he does, again that money goes back to the bank, again some amount is kept back, again the rest of the amount is given as loan to someone else. So this money keeps on multiplying itself. That's called a money multiplier effect. That keeps on happening continuously. Same thing we are looking at here. The money is circulating in the hands of the common people. The money that was brought in as loan from World Bank, that money starts rotating again and again and multiplying itself. Within 10 years, this $100 billion is going to give us an effect of $950 billion. An infusion of $100 billion in 10 years, if it gets a free circulation, would give us an effect of $950 billion. Now tell me, can the government repay the loan with interest? Yes, they can. What would be the interest on this $100 billion? Given India's credit rating of BBB minus, right? Given that credit rating, India would be getting loan at a rate of 16% around. 16 to 18% in between that. So after 10 years, India would be supposed to return back $226 billion. We have $950 billion. Let's repay back that $226 billion. What's the problem? No problem. You can return back that money. Right? This is what happens when a country takes loan from World Bank or any such organization. It actually helps to boost your economy, grow your economy further. As against this, let's look at the Chinese loans, as he was saying. China gives loan to a country with a condition. What is the condition? You can only employ Chinese companies to do the work. Chinese companies, number one, most of them, they are government-owned companies. Why? In most of the companies, 51% stake is of the government. Those which are in private sector, there are a few which are in private sector, chalo. Even those companies, they can come out of China, participate in the international economy under one condition. That they will be bringing raw material, labor and everything only from China. Here what happened? Government of India, they gave the orders to 4 Indian companies and the money got invested in Indian economy. When China gives loan to some country, what happens? That country gives the work to Chinese company and the Chinese company invests the whole money in Chinese economy. Because they do the hiring from China, they get the raw material from China, they get every tool from China. So where is the money getting invested? For practical purposes in economic terms, where is the money getting invested? In the economy of that country or in the economy of China? Just imagine, China gave loan to you with its right hand and with the left hand took the money back. And not only they took the money back, now they're telling you, you still are supposed to pay me. This is Chinese loan. Now do you realize what's happening? When you take loan from a country or loan from a financial institute and you invest that money in your economy starts growing. But here in case of Chinese loans, your economy is not growing. China's economy grows. Because all these effects are happening where? In China, not in your country. All the money returns back to China, not in your country. In 2010, in a sense, the Sri Lankan government, the then Sri Lankan government under Mahinda Rajapaksa was the president at that point of time. That government became an international pariah, untouchable practically, rogue. Why? The amount of human rights violations that they did to end the civil war. I'm telling you 2 instances. Instance number 1, where Sri Lankan soldiers used Tamilians as human shield against the LTTE combatants. If the LTTE combatants fire, these Tamilians will face the bullet. And from behind these Tamilians, the Sri Lankan soldiers will be shooting back, killing these Tamilians. Instance number 2, this was actually aired in BBC and then BBC asked for forgiveness. This video is no more in circulation. I'm talking about a 10-year-old boy. In Jaffna, one of the camp fell. In that camp, a 10-year-old boy, in 2009, that boy was 10 years old, the only son of a person called Bhelupillai Prabhakaran, the head of LTTE. This boy was there in that camp and this boy was, obviously, he was rescued, he got into the hands of the Sri Lankan soldiers. In the beginning of the video, we are seeing that the boy was sitting on a bench at a corner, very scared. One of the soldiers gave the boy some apple or some fruit to eat. The boy was eating that fruit. Now the BBC reporter and the videographer, they went somewhere else to see the whole camp. What is there in the camp? the weapons which were recovered and everything. All of a sudden, they heard sound of bullets being fired. They came rushing. When they came back, what are they seeing? That boy was lying dead in a pool of blood. That boy was just lying dead on the field, on the floor, and there was blood everywhere. Later on, the government of Sri Lanka said that that boy died at the time of fighting. He was a collateral damage, a casualty of war. Really? The only fault of that boy was that his father's name was Velupillai Prabhakaran. As a result, no one was ready to do any dealings with Sri Lanka at that point of time. And China loves this kind of countries. They're helpless, they need support. No country in the world can survive alone. They need support. What did China do? China gave Sri Lanka a loan of $8.4 billion. Sri Lanka is an economy of $56 billion. Look at the size of the loan. 1/7 of Sri Lanka's economy, not GDP. Sri Lanka's whole economy. Clear? That's the amount of loan that was given by the Chinese to Sri Lanka for 2 ports. They were going to build 2 ports. Colombo Port City project and Hambantota Port project. 2 ports are going to be built for $8.4 billion. And again the Chinese loan. Right? Problem is, fine, this $8.4 billion came actually when the audit was done in 2015. It was found out $1 billion has gone missing. Mahindra Rajapaksa, good man. Do you think only your politicians are good people? There are good politicians everywhere. So, $1 billion went missing. In 2015, Sri Lankan government would say that there was a new government which came into power, Maithripala Sirisena government that came into power in Sri Lanka. That government would say, see, number one, there has been financial irregularities. $1 billion has gone missing. Right? You, China, you have been giving the money. You can't say where the money has gone. Right? And $1 billion is missing, and the government of Sri Lanka will have to repay back you that money. First, we would like to know where that $1 billion has gone. And then at the same point of time, every norm, environmental norms, coastal norms, every norms have been violated in Hambantota and Colombo Port City project. So we would like to stop the project. 5 years, they say that we are going to stop the project. Achha, one more thing. Chinese loans, they're like China itself. Come with an interest rate of 6%. Normally, when a friend gives loan to another friend, they don't charge much interest. You have to charge interest. If you don't charge interest, according to international laws, that is not a loan. That becomes a grant. If it is a loan, you have to charge interest. That's why India charges interest of 0.1%. Because you have to charge interest. China charges interest of 6%. China's friendship is also like Chinese products in India, I mean. So anyway, so after 5 years, Sri Lankan government, they stopped the construction of Hambantota port project. They said, we are not going forward with this port project. China says, fine, it's your country. But then return us back the money in full with interest. Interest of 5 years. Fixed interest of 6% per annum for 5 years. 30%? $8.4 billion. So another $2.4 billion. 2.8, right. 2.8 or 2.4? 2.8, good. So now tell me. Right? It was in this backdrop that the whole play was going on. India would finally give Sri Lanka a loan, a soft loan of $5 billion. Sri Lanka will pay some of the loan back. But even then, the controlling right of Hambantota will completely pass on to the Chinese. 99 years of lease, it was far worse previously. I'm not getting into the whole details right now. Why? Because there was a freehold land as well. Sri Lanka was at least able to negotiate because the money that was given by India to Sri Lanka, and because that money they returned back, they were able to negotiate. There was 21 hectares of freehold land. That land at least they have recovered. They said no freehold land. This 99 years of lease is still good. There was supposed to be 21 hectares of land for freehold basis forever. But the controlling authority for Hambantota port project has completely passed on to the Chinese. It was this time, since this time, that Sri Lanka's foreign exchange reserve started dwindling. This is the first thing that caused foreign exchange crisis in Sri Lanka. And since then, they are still grappling. It was in this backdrop that the COVID-19 pandemic came in. So now do you realize why this crisis became so severe at a time? All these things, they are accumulating, they are collecting, they're getting collected. Already the economy was in a bad state, bad shape, and now comes the COVID-19 pandemic. And they have to repay back to China. And one more thing that happened, 2019 election, Rajapaksas came back to power, relation with India started deteriorating. So the former help that was being available from India, that help stopped. Not stopped, but that help got reduced, substantially got reduced. Right? And in this backdrop, they are importing fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, everything, even farm machines from outside, from China and from India. Clear? So just imagine, already their foreign exchange reserve is in a bad state. In addition to that, they are importing too much for food production in the country. It was in this backdrop that the Rajapaksa brothers, right now who's the president? Gotabaya Rajapaksa. In 2010, Gotabaya Rajapaksa was the defense minister. Mahinda Rajapaksa was the president. Right? All in the family. Anyway, so now Gotabaya Rajapaksa is the president, Mahinda Rajapaksa is the prime minister. That's the younger brother, who's half Sri Lankan, half American. Yeah, he's an American passport holder, that guy is. Anyway, so, no, he has been removed anyway. Finally, he has been removed. Chalo, whatever it might be, let's not get into the dynasty again. We already have good amount of dynasties here in India. So, anyway, Gotabaya Rajapaksa is the president and Mahinda Rajapaksa is the prime minister. Right? And they decided ki, okay, fine, the amount of help we were taking from India, let's reduce that. Okay. And not only that, all of a sudden they would decide that we are going to revolutionize Sri Lankan agriculture. Guys, agriculture of a country is something which is always slow moving. Don't try to do anything drastic with agriculture ever. In the history of the world, previously 2 countries tried to do this. All of a sudden revolutionizing agriculture. And the effect has been very bad. The first first country to try revolutionize agriculture was Soviet Union, 1922. Soviet Union would all of a sudden decide, Joseph Stalin, the then head of Soviet Union, he would all of a sudden decide that I am going to bring in cooperative system, commune system of agriculture. When this sudden revolution was brought in, the whole agricultural system collapsed. And the worst hit was the most agriculturally prosperous region called Ukraine today. Why so? Why does this happen? Let's talk about India. Merely 17% of 17% of India's GDP comes from agriculture, right? But 60% of the workforce is engaged there.
49%.
That's directly. You're not taking the allied sector. I need to take the allied sector. Right? Farm processing of the farm producers and everything. Where would go that? So I would be including directly and indirectly the whole workforce there. Because if the production, agricultural production gets hampered, where goes their job? Those who are processing the farm food, what would they be doing? Those workers engaged in fertilizer production, what would they do? For whom would be they producing the fertilizer if there is no consumer? Even their job will go into vain. Economy, bro. Everything is interconnected. So obviously when I'm looking at the agriculture sector, I'm looking at those who are directly and indirectly engaged in that. And that workforce is 60%. So if anything goes wrong with agriculture sector, 60% of the households are going to be affected. Do you realize that? That's where the problem lies. The second country who tried to do this, China itself. 1958. Mao Zedong all of a sudden would decide that I am going to revolutionize Chinese agriculture. 16 lakh people died. No one cares though. Communist countries, who cares? For them, these are small sacrifices made for the collective good. 16 lakh people gone. And now this time Sri Lanka decided, we'll revolutionize our agriculture. Good, do it. Problem with the two forms of agriculture is, organic agriculture might be good to hear. Production is 60% less. What you produce, if you convert into organic farming, the production all of a sudden comes down to 40% of the original produce. So now tell me about food security in the country. Previously the country which was food self-sufficient, all of a sudden because of that 60% drop in production, now that country became forced to buy food from outside. They stopped buying fertilizer from outside to save foreign exchange. Now they are forced to buy food from outside. In any way, their foreign exchange reserve got exhausted and started food scarcity. Now do you realize what happened in Sri Lanka? Always break the problems, right? And please don't get carried away by what you think is right. Let people say what is happening there. If you start living in a world built by you yourself, that's a fool's paradise, please. Please come out of it. Clear? So that's how the things are to be looked at. This is what happened in Sri Lanka. the Sri Lankan economic crisis. Okay. One more thing that is brewing is the ethnic clash in Darfur, South Sudan. Although that's quite a negative report, I don't think that much attention should be given to that. By the way, those material that I told you about, I've already passed it on to the institute, right? It should be made available to you shortly. Okay. A lot of issues have been listed there. Please go through them, right? And what I have done is, wherever possible, I have been using the links of the various news reports as well. So take out those news reports, use those links, go to those links. Mostly I have been using Hindu, right? Go to those links, read what's there. Clear? Chalo. Any question? First of all, for such a long period of time, we have been talking about all these issues. Now, your confusion from any of these issues, and then I'll be moving towards the last topic, that is about the death penalty. That's the death penalty row that's going on. In a brief.
So regarding Sri Lanka taking step in complete ban of chemical fertilization to organic farming, why they calculate the production yield from the organic?
See, what they made the mistake is, they didn't rely on the technical experts. The technical experts in Sri Lanka, they kept on warning them, please don't do that, please don't do that. What happens when you have the numerical superiority in the parliament? At times you feel I can do anything, I'm the god. And you start ignoring the technical experts. Never do that. If you start ignoring the technical experts know the field. That's what their job is. If you start ignoring the technical experts, you'll always get into that fool's paradise. That's what happened with the Rajapaksa brothers. Just imagine the country which was worshipping the Rajapaksa brothers 2 years back, today they are calling for their heads. That's what is happening right now. There is continuous call for the Rajapaksa brothers to resign, fresh elections, maybe someone can bring back Sri Lanka from the clutches where they have gone into. Right? Just tell me now, what were they thinking when they stopped importing fertilizers and pesticides? Fine, but to reduce the export bill, you actually increase the export bill. Because fertilizers, pesticides as raw material, their prices were cheaper than food, which is a manufactured product. Its price would always be higher. Right? Raw materials are always cheaper in that respect. So now when you're importing wheat, when you're importing rice, when you're importing pulses from outside, that will be costing you more. That they never took into consideration. Why? They're the god. They can do anything. This is a typical example of what you said. Politics driving the economy. Yeah. And for your information, Sri Lanka has already failed to repay one of the installments. So they are officially one of the defaulters. It will keep on rising now. Unless and until they get a good, hefty amount of infusion of cash all of a sudden, this will keep on growing for the time being. There's a problem with economy. When the economy is on the upswing, it will keep on giving you good results. Continuously, it will keep on giving you good results. When it is on the downswing, that bad result will also start multiplying. Right?
Printing of cash.
See, if they start printing cash right now, this is the problem that I would be saying, because even number of ministers in India, they all of a sudden said, okay, not an issue, we can print cash. Is it a piece of paper? If you start printing cash like anything, what will happen, you know? After a point of time, you'll burn those cash. Yeah, Zimbabwe. You'll start burning the cash, and you'll be during winters you'll be taking heat from that cash, because that cash will lose all its value. Do you know how money is valued? There are two measures. Previously, before 1974, there was a measure called gold standard. Right? For every 1 rupee that was printed by the RBI, yes, they stored or they kept aside equivalent amount of gold. Gold which they could then hedge in case of any crisis. Right? Today, you take out any note, and in the note there will be a statement. I assure to pay the bearer the sum of whatever the denomination of the note is, and then the signature of the governor of RBI. Well, not on the 1 rupee notes. Finance minister. On the 1 rupee notes, the finance minister used to sign. Okay, anyway, let's come back to what we were talking about. So before 1974, it was gold standard. The money was hedged against gold standard. The promise that was made against that amount of gold that was kept aside. Say 10,000 rupee notes were printed. As against the 10,000 rupees, equivalent amount of gold was set aside, and the currency notes of 10,000 rupees were issued in the market. Right? That system has changed. Yup. Not just dollar, 4 currencies. A basket of 4 currencies are used. Dollar, euro, the pound sterling, and Japanese yuan. Yen or yuan? Yuan is Chinese, right? Yen. Japanese yen. These are the 4 currencies which create the basket, and against this basket the money is hedged. Why? Because these are the 4 currencies which are most stable. That's what is understood. That impact of inflation and deflation on these currencies are the least. That's why they are taken as the basket, and against them the dollar price or rupees is hedged. So if 1 rupee is being issued by the RBI, equivalent amount of foreign exchange is being set aside by the RBI. If that currency is not there in the hands of the RBI, this rupee note is valueless. It's just a piece of paper. So you can't print money if you just feel like. If you do that, your currency will be devalued grossly, and after a point of time it will become valueless, and there will be huge inflation in the country. Zimbabwe, the best example. They started printing trillion Zimbabwean whatever the Zimbabwean dollar, right? $1 trillion note. And the value of that $1 trillion note was of 1 rupee coin here in India. It's better to burn that note than having it in the purse. Clear?
Why people are asking that president should present that right, but in India if you don't,
well, this is because of the distribution or separation of power in Sri Lanka. Right? Sri Lankan constitution says that certain area of the operation, say economy, foreign policy, defense, right, telecommunication, internal security, number of such areas, they are solely in the hands of the president. The Prime Minister looks after only the internal development, healthcare, education. These are the areas which are in the hands of the Prime Minister. Unlike India, in India it is the Prime Minister who is directly elected by the electorate, by the common people. The President is not directly elected, right? That's why the legitimacy of the Prime Minister is more in India. The President can be the head of the state, But the president is not directly elected by the common people. That's why the president does not rule here in India. He is the symbolic head of the nation. It is the prime minister who holds the power here in India because he is directly elected by the people. In Sri Lanka, both of them are directly elected by the people. Both the president and the prime minister. And the way we have the 7th schedule here, separating power between center and state, similarly in Sri Lanka, they have separation of power between president and prime minister. So the areas that they have failed in are the areas which are actually looked after by the president. But actually the anguish is against the Rajapaksa family as such. That they collectively they have failed. Clear? Anything else? No? Chalo. Let's take up the last topic, the next topic. What's the issue with this death penalty? What's going on?
Someone suggesting to not impose the penalty.
See, this discussion has been going on since long. This is not a new discussion. The idea is whether the state has the right to take someone's life or not. Let's talk about in details, right? Because the law, the legal system that you're talking about, this legal system is a colonial legal system. The colonial masters always had the right to take away whatever you have. If they could have taken away your shirt as well. Right? Anyway, so let's not talk about the legal procedure. Let's talk about the ethical and moral dimension here. What we call as social consciousness and social conscience. Should the state have the power to take away someone's life? That's the question. 2009, Law Commission report states, it was 49th or something of that, so I'm losing the number right now. That report states that the state should not be having the right to take away anyone's life. That's the idea of the National Law Commission. Why? Can we give someone the life back? The person whose life you're taking away. Say you gave death penalty to a person. You took the life of that person. After 10 years, new evidences came in which showed that the person was innocent. Or there was reasonable doubt on the verdict that was passed. Can you return back the life of that person? Based on this argument, in most of the developed nations, capital punishment has already been banned. Okay. Even in USA, in a number of states, they have banned capital punishment. Capital punishment is not awarded in those particular states of United States of America. Fine, that's their issue. Let's not talk about that. Let's talk about our concern. Even here, gradually, the first case I would be talking about is Bachchan Singh versus State of Punjab, 1980. When for the first time, this power to award death penalty in the hands of the court was questioned. Clear? As is understood, in chapter 28 of Criminal Procedure Code, it states that if a sessions court, first of all, it has to be a session court which can award the death penalty. So the sessions court in one particular case said, okay, no, there should not be any death penalty in this particular case. And the case goes to the High Court and the High Court gives death penalty. No. The High Court cannot originally give death penalty. Or the Supreme Court cannot originally give death penalty. The first right and the only right to give death penalty is in the hands of the sessions court, the lower court. But even in those cases where the lower court is giving death penalty, that has to be validated by a high court. When the sessions court gives death penalty, mandatorily the state has to take that case to the high court. That the lower court, the sessions court has given death penalty, you please look into it whether this person should be given death penalty or not. Right? On validation, the high court may keep the death penalty, may remove the death penalty. Right? Even when the high court validates the death penalty, this case can be taken to Supreme Court on further appeal. Right? First of all, from single bench of high court, it will go to the division, double bench or triple bench. Right? And then from there, it can again go to the Supreme Court. Doesn't matter. If throughout death penalty is carried forward, even then there is a system of recuse existing, pardon, where the person who has been awarded death penalty can appeal before the President of India to be pardoned. Right? Now, we know our President, for all practical purposes, is a rubber stamp. Okay? To the President means ultimately the President's office transfers it to the Ministry of Home Affairs. The Ministry of Home Affairs looks into every nitty-gritty whether the person can be pardoned or not, and then gives its recommendation to the President of India, and the President behaves accordingly. Right? See, even there, a reasonable restriction has been put by the Supreme Court in the recent past. What happened? One of our former presidents, APJ Abdul Kalam, he was personally completely against death penalty. So what he did when he was the president, all the recommendations by the Ministry of Home Affairs, whenever someone appealed to him for pardon, those requests for pardon went to the Ministry of Home Affairs. The Ministry of Home Affairs in most of the cases rejected and sent it back to the President for the President to sign, right, and deny the pardon. APJ Abdul Kalam, he used one of his veto powers, pocket veto, that he had, right? Since he was against death penalty morally and ethically, so what he did, he used pocket veto. He never took any call on the death penalty cases. Whenever, and those people, they remained in jail, practically enjoying pardon. Right. This same practice was carried forward by the next president, Pratibha Devi Singh Patil. Right. She also followed the same tradition of APJ Abdul Kalam. After Pratibha Devi Singh Patil, Pranab Mukherjee became the president. Pranab Mukherjee was a former finance minister. Okay? And he knew the expense that was being borne by the exchequer for keeping safe some of the verdicts like Ajmal Kasab and others. So the moment Pranab Mukherjee became the president, what he did, he started signing on the rejection of the pardon that was there. And one after another, all those pending cases were getting cleared. First, Ajmal Kasab was hanged. Then Afzal Guru's case that was also disposed of by the president. So a number of such cases came and the president, he just rejected them and things went ahead like that. Now the Supreme Court realized that things are going beyond control. The Supreme Court would intervene and the Supreme Court would say that, see, in those cases where the president, even the president's office, has been sitting idle on the appeal for pardon for too long, that also in a sense is a violation of Article 21, right to life with dignity. Because personal liberty won't come into this.
In Rajiv Gandhi assassination case,
That was already there.
Maybe it was filed in 2012, but
Yeah.
till now there is no response.
Number of such cases are there. Okay. So the Supreme Court would come out with a verdict that in those cases where the president has not taken a call early enough, okay, in these cases the stipulated period has not been given, okay, said early enough. The Supreme Court says that in these cases this amounts to violation of right to life with dignity. Because if a man or someone who's living with the fear of being hanged, where is the dignity in that living? The President's office is violating that Article 21, right to life with dignity in this case. So in those cases where the President's office has not taken the decision fast enough, it will be assumed that they have been pardoned or their death penalty has been commuted. Clear? All these restrictions are already there. It is in this backdrop this whole debate is again making a round, where we know that even the Supreme Court has taken up a suo motu action. They have registered a suo motu case. Let's see what the verdict comes out to be. Clear? So that's all about this particular issue as well. Please keep an eye on this topic. Right? If the verdict comes out pretty soon, we may expect questions from here. That's why I rake this issue up. Clear? Even for Indian society, what do I see? I'm seeing that we have 10 minutes left. At least till 1 we can stretch the class. Chalo, can we take up one more issue here? Right. In the recent times, we are seeing that so many dignitaries from Britain, they are coming to India. Right? First, our External Affairs Minister, he had a talk with the British, his British counterpart. Then this Boris Johnson, he also came, took a ride of the JCBs. Right? Why Britain is so keen about India? What's happening? This is the impact of Brexit. We were anticipating these things long back. These were supposed to happen a long time back. Didn't happen. See, post-Brexit, the British companies, they lost a good share of the European market. Right? If they don't take immediate measures, if they don't take immediate steps, in the long run, this can impact the British economy badly. So they need a good market. And then that good market still exists in India. In India, we have a considerable middle class population. And the market is always the middle class. Let's see why I'm saying this. Right? We did this exercise in Indian society class, I think. Say a person having 2,000 crore rupees. Isn't he a good market? One person have worth 2,000 crore rupees. See what's happening. The person has 2,000 crore rupees. So I assume he would be having at least 3 houses. Yeah, a guy of 2,000 crore rupees, 3 houses, banta hai yaar, right? So tell me, how many refrigerators will he buy? Chalo, 10. A person like me, gosh, I have that much of money. 1 refrigerator for non-veg items only, getting recorded anyway. Yeah, I'm a non-vegetarian, can't help it. Sorry. 1 only for ice creams, cold drinks, and something else. Let's not specify. Okay. 1 for ghasfus. So 3 refrigerators at least in a house. 3 houses, 9 refrigerators. 1 maybe in a car. For good things, 10. Can't have any more refrigerators here. Can't think of. 10 at max. Achha, chalo, tell me how many television sets will he buy? Three houses, 5 televisions per house, chalo. 15 televisions, maybe 2 in the cars, those small screen ones. Can't buy more than that. How many cars can he buy? 7, 8, 9, 10, 15, 20. Petrol prices will make him poor, yaar. 2,000 crore rupees only. Petrol prices are 100 rupees, 120 rupees, 125 rupees. Excuse him, please. Not 20. Okay, 10 max. Okay. Now let's divide these 2,000 crore rupees into packets of 50 lakh rupees. To how many people can we give those packets? 4,000. 50 lakh. So from a high net worth individual, I am delving typically into middle class. 50 lakh per household, everything included. How many refrigerators? 4,000 refrigerators. How many television sets? 4,000. How many cars? Small cars maybe. 4,000. Tell me which is a market. Clear? High net worth individuals are not the market. Middle class is the market. Clear? So, and obviously the policymakers, they know that in India we have good amount of middle class. So this is a market. And I'm looking at the post-Brexit scenario in Britain. Now do you realize why Boris Johnson never asked any tough question to Mr. Modi? Why he was riding the JCB? As simple as that. This was anticipated, this was expected, it's happening. Clear? That's the scenario here. So there's no reason for, whenever you see something happening, please try and understand why that thing is happening. Right? And normally in Western Hemisphere, economy is still the driver of the politics. Right? So in that sense, even in Japan and China, economy is still the driver of politics. Those places where politics has become the driver of economy, do know that place is already doomed. And one more thing, we are looking at this crisis in Sri Lanka, right? Nepal and Bhutan are also on the same path. Be careful. Next set of news is going to come from Nepal and Bhutan. So be careful about that from right now. Keep an eye on that, on those developments. Okay? That's all about what we had to discuss here. Chalo, thank you class and all the best. Okay?